To order the October 4th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, Redevelopment, Successor Agency, and Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight's going to be led by our city clerk, Chris Rankin. The council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our legal counsel regarding one matter of substantial exposure to litigation, and no action was taken, and to confer with our labor negotiator regarding negotiations with all of our bargaining units, Police Officers Association Local 522, Management and Specialists and Professionals and Confidential Unit, and no action was taken. With that, we're going to proceed to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, the Council is prohibited by state law from having a discussion or taking action on items that are brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the Council on this or any other agenda item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the City Clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard, and to that end, we ask that all the comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that simply indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. We take the yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. Item 1A doesn't have a staff report, but once the staff report's concluded on the other agenda items and we've moved on to council questions or to public testimony, we don't take additional speaking requests. So if you're here on a particular agenda item, the sooner the better, but definitely by the end of the staff report to submit the cards. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause hives, anxiety, and other disorders, and so we do ask that there not be any boos or catcalls or actually any applause or other demonstrations, and we try to maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. So with that, we have a couple of requests to speak under item 1A, and the first is by Crystal Watts.
Good evening. I'm here again to speak about the relocation of the Nest project. Proponents of the project's location continue to describe this project as a park. In my opinion, the difference between a park and the Nest rest stop is this: a solo male at a park will draw scrutiny from other parents and adults. Anyone who's taken kids to a park knows what I'm talking about. The Nest project is not a park, and given the nature of this rest stop, it would not be out of place to see someone sitting there alone resting, but really scoping out kids on a playground. I hear leaders say that protecting our children is our most sacred duty. I join you in that effort. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Deanna Trujillo-Chrisman.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be heard. I'm a lifelong resident of West Sacramento. I've been teaching at Westfield Village for 4 years. I attended Our Lady of Grace School as a child. Now my children are alumni, and one is still an active second grader. I wanted to ask you to move the location for the Nest. Let's begin with the Sycamore Trail, which you've used as an example. I would like to invite you to come to my school site. Speak to my principal, assistant principal, any teacher or campus aide. Ask us if we would like an elevated rest stop looking into our school. The answer would be no. We have enough trouble with the trail and the park as it is. While you are there, you can take a look at what the award-winning Sycamore Trail has brought to Westfield. We will show you fencing that's been ripped apart by the homeless seeking shelter. We will show you garbage thrown over our fence piling up in the corner of our field. You can see the holes in the fencing from a grass fire started along the trail. Our campus aides and staff monitor our fence line for drug paraphernalia, not because we're paranoid, but because it's a reality we live with. Our staff is proud of our school and our children, so we make sure to pick up whatever is dumped, be it shoes, garbage, or needles. I welcome you to come walk the fence line and pick up what's been tossed over our fence. If, as you stated at a prior meeting, there's no money in our city's discretionary budget, how will this rest stop be maintained, cleaned, and monitored? Our staff has dealt with removing transients from the trail so that it's safe for our students to walk home. Last year, our campus aides made the call to go on lockdown due to 3 suspicious individuals on the trail. In 11 years of teaching, that was my first real lockdown. I don't have the words to tell you the panic I felt shoving children under tables. Again, this is a trail without a rest stop. Every time I use our playground to teach PE, I'm mindful of who's walking on the trail, who's watching my students from afar, and I'm always looking for unusual behavior. Now imagine there's a rest stop in which it would be difficult to tell if someone is loitering, taking a break, or in the middle of a drug deal. Now add in school dismissal, be it Our Lady of Grace, Stonegate, or River City, and ask yourself, is this the exact spot that on the Clarksburg Trail? Is it right for the nest? I want to be clear. I'm not a crazy mom who thinks her kid's a snowflake. He's actually the third. He's lucky we pick him up from school. My concern is for the children as a community. No one's asking our children to stay inside and hide. In fact, I want my kid to run and play and use his entire playground. I don't want strangers to have a seated view while he does this. I'm happy to have a lovely project such as the nest on the trail. However, its space needs to be reconsidered. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your visit to Westfield.
All right, thank you. And Sabrina Lockhart.
Good evening. I'm back to discuss the Public Records Act request and the information that I received. I want to thank the city clerk for being so responsive and professional with my request. And I am mindful of the resources that are needed to compile this information. We're seeking this information to better understand the conflicting statements that we've heard about the nest. For instance, a council member and a project proponent told us that there are no public dollars earmarked for the project, but the city plans to use $75,000 in Measure E funds for staffing, project reviews, and utility connections. Additionally, we were told there was no rush to get the project approved, and then less than a week after we were told that, the plans for the nest were submitted to the city. In the plans, there's a vicinity map of the project which is labeled adjacent properties such as Target, Nugget, and Lowe's. You can't even see Lowe's from where the nest will be. But the closest neighbor, an elementary school playground that serves the entire community, isn't even labeled on the map in the plan submitted to the city. Our desire to obtain public information comes from our need to trust but verify the information we receive about this project. We believe sunshine's the best antiseptic and that this information will help us engage in meaningful public discourse. So our primary concerns, which has been stated time and time again, is about the safety of the rest stop, which is not a park. And our concerns have been dismissed. So I asked for police logs for the first 8 months of this year within a half mile of the location of the nest. And I was just appalled and shocked at the number of calls at this location. I'll go ahead and email you tonight the information that I received, but there were 1,700 police calls just during the first 8 months of this year, just within a half-mile radius of where the nest will be. There were 130 arrests and citations issued in this area, and the vast majority of these calls occurred in the Southport Town Center and the shopping center across the street on Lake Washington. In fact, at Target, there was an arrest for indecent exposure. I've asked for the police report to get more details about this crime, but the incident was called in before 8 a.m., That's before Target opened, so that leads me to believe that this crime occurred in the parking lot, the same parking lot that's right next to where the nest will be. There were also arrests for drug offenses and more than 24 calls that police responded to for homeless and mentally unstable individuals. So there are a considerable amount of time and resources already being allocated to this location. And many of these issues can be resolved because they occur on private property. And my fear is that police won't be able to address these concerns because the nest becomes public property. So for the public safety concerns that we've outlined and have been validated by our Public Records Act request, I beg you to move the proposed location of the nest. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So those are the only requests we have under item A, so item 1A, so we're going to proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening? Councilmember Sandine?
Trying to find the closest mic here. The Port Commission met earlier tonight, and we authorized the purchase of vacant land on Carolina Avenue. We also had a visit from Joe Carrillo of SSA Marine, and he updated us on the rice and cement shipments, and it looks like there'll be a busy year ahead in the port. The port CEO reported that the emergency dredging project was recently completed as well. Last week, I attended the YOLO LAFCO YED Fall 2017 Summit along with Planning Commission Chair Bernadette Austin, the city staff members Amanda Berlin and David Tilley. the talks focused on cannabis regulation. We received an update from Lori Ajax, the chief of the California Bureau of Cannabis Control, and she provided background on new regulations and the future state licensing process, which is coming up in the next several months. We also heard from Joe Devlin with the City of Sacramento Cannabis Office of Policy and Enforcement, and as well as I think there were 3 other speakers. It was really helpful for me to learn more about this evolving topic and hear some of the best practices and concerns. In fact, a Sonoma County Supervisor was there as well, told us about what was happening in their county. I also had a chance to attend the West Sacramento Cyclocross Grand Prix on Sunday. And the organizer, one of the organizers, the key organizer, Matthew Hargrove, commended our city parks, our police, our fire, public works departments, and everyone else from the city, and the list was very long. He really appreciated the help that the cyclocross group received to host the international racing event here. Mr. Hargrove on Sunday estimated, and I haven't heard from any other source, he estimated over 4,000 attendees. And this 2-day event put West Sac on the cyclocross world stage. And then earlier today, Councilmember Roscoe and I attended the West Sacramento Chamber's State of Yolo County Address. Assemblymember McCarty, Supervisor Villegas, and County Administrator Blacklock all presented and shared some of the strategic planning that's going on with the county. And there were a number of staff members, including our city manager, there as well. And they also shared some recent achievements by the county and the state with regard to housing, education, and transportation. There was a great deal of discussion about homelessness and the need for permanent housing in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Other reports or communications? Councilmember Roscoe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I attended the Yolo County Children's Alliance monthly meeting on the 24th. At that meeting, we discussed proposed changes to the Yolo County Children's Alliance Board of Directors, and there was agreement that the Board of Directors will split into 2 separate entities, one being the Board of Directors and the second, a Child Abuse Prevention Council that will operate akin to an organization such as in Sacramento. We have the Sacramento Death Review Team, which consists of law enforcement officers, district attorneys, coroner, other members of social service agencies to actually discuss child abuse specific issues. So that was a pretty big deal, but I'm looking forward to seeing the direction that the Child Abuse Council will take once that body is formed and the members are selected. With respect to regional sanitation, on September 21st, I took a tour with Supervisor Oscar Villegas over to the South River Road pump station for the very first time. Amazing to see the progress. For those of us who don't know, the pump station is currently undergoing a ring levy. They're getting a ring levy there because of flood concerns. Specifically, that station is a major artery for many of the regional sanitation stations around the Sacramento and outlying areas. And if that particular pump station were to go underwater, that would essentially shut down our sanitation systems throughout the region. So they're constructing a ring levee, which is currently under construction, but pretty far along. But we had an opportunity to see the project there, and I do understand that they do tours for those folks who are interested in going out there and seeing it for themselves. But those are the 2 major items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And just a couple of reports. Today, I represented the council and the other municipal elected officials at the Line Capital Region Board of Directors. Councilmember Sandine is a member of that board as well in her professional capacity. And there were presentations around the pre-apprenticeship program that's occurring at the Bright Center along with NCCT and a possible scale of that program. We're still, I'll be quite blunt, we are still working through some substantial organizational issues and challenges around the effectiveness of this kind of region-wide effort around education and workforce opportunity. A lot of issues to work through. in terms of process and the focus on results that we'd like to take here. So I'll keep reporting back, but we don't yet have significant outcomes from that process yet. Tomorrow, I'm going to be. I've been invited to speak at a national gathering of the various banks of the Federal Reserve of the United States on workforce development. Our city is being featured for the Kids Home Run and for other work that we're doing on workforce development for our people. I'm also there in my capacity as the chair of the Education Workforce Committee for the Conference of Mayors. But this is the second time we're being featured for work that's happening here in the community. But it's really, already CNBC is doing a piece that will cover the Kids Home Run as well. So good chance to feature the work that's underway here in terms of making West Sacramento the best place in the country to raise a family. And then the city manager and I were in Washington, D.C. last week. I was first attending a session at the Brookings Institution to craft a children's accord between cities and mayors and a variety of other potential partners. The mayor of Providence, Rhode Island, and I are leading this effort in its attempt to try to apply the same national leadership on children and education at the city level as we did on climate change. The council knows after President Bush declined to sign the Kyoto Accords, it was mayors in the cities around the country that said, we will do it anyway. We'll do the city portion of the climate agreement anyway. That was a major factor in keeping the U.S. at the table around that work, and a lot of progress on climate emissions occurred as a result. And the unexpected model of this approach from Brookings and that we're working on with the Mayor of Providence is to take that same kind of action-oriented approach rather than asking Congress for a set of actions around children's issues, to instead rally a group of cities around the country to agree to commit to things like what we're doing on the Kids Home Run on a national scale to change the equation around children's opportunity, health, and workforce development. Then following that, we did a marathon. I think it's perfectly appropriate to describe it that way, a marathon of meetings in Washington, D.C. on the city's major federal priorities, those two being the streetcar project, getting through the final stages of the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration's administrative process to sign the final agreements to transfer the money that the federal government has already said that they will invest in the project, and then on our flood project. As is always the case in a project of this scale and complexity, there's some hiccup or some challenge at every moment. I remember the council is aware of how we've overcome all of those. So we're working on a couple of those technical issues on this trip as well. We met with both of our senators' offices as well as several members of Congress. I met separately with a couple of senators and members of Congress around DACA and also the state and local tax deduction, because the president had proposed his tax package that would destroy California taxpayers that same day. So we were on the Hill also pressing on that issue. We met with the Federal Transit Administration, got good feedback from the acting administrator there around the prospects for the streetcar agreement, and then also met with the Army Corps of Engineers, the senior official performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, essentially the acting head of the civilian part of the Army Corps of Engineers, who happens to be somebody who's worked on our flood project extensively and made very good progress, I think, on some of the key punch list items we had on the flood project. And so I know full reports is being provided to the council and also to our partners in West Africa around that work. But a very productive, challenging environment in Washington, D.C., but a very productive set of a few dozen meetings around some of our key priorities. So if there's no other communications, we have no appointments this evening, so we're going to proceed to the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 16. There's just a minor clarification on a figure in a table at the council desk. There's no corrections to any of the recommended actions, but are there any items for separate consideration or any item to remove from the consent agenda?
14.
All right. Item 14 is consideration of Resolution 17-66, urging Congress to pass and the President to sign the DREAM Act of 2017. Ms. Roscoe?
Thank you. Thank you, first off, Mr. Robinson, for presenting this. It was my very first request on behalf of the council. And I went back and forth earlier today as to whether or not I wanted to pull the item, but felt that it would be important to actually state some comments as to why I thought this was important to bring before our council. On March 3rd, 2017, earlier this year, I took a trip over to the River City High School campus along with Sheriff Ed Prieto and Supervisor Oscar Villegas to meet with some Friday Night Live students for the sole purpose of maybe providing a little inspirational speech and talk about the trajectory of our careers and the journeys that brought us to the positions that we currently hold. That part went well. But what we noticed during the question and answer period was that the conversation took a tone that was out of fear. It was concern for the safety of these children's families, for the future as West Sacramentans or even in the United States, and whether or not they were going to get deported and whether or not they were going to be able to enjoy their graduation, because that was actually upcoming and they were planning with caps and gowns and didn't know. It wasn't about affording it necessarily, it was about whether or not their parents and family members could afford to go and enjoy it without the fear of what they believed would be our law enforcement officers approaching them and perhaps challenging their ability to be there legally. As a daughter of an immigrant, my father came from Mexico back at 13 years old and did not come legally. He created a business for himself, which ultimately was Mario's Landscaping. And I still remember, I didn't grow up with my father, but I still remember visiting his home and getting awakened at 4 in the morning so that I could go water the plants. Why did the plants really need watering at 4 in the morning? They don't. But my father was instilling in me a work ethic to work very hard, to never take for granted the opportunities that we were given. And as a result, he had not, unfortunately, he did not have the opportunity to see the fruits of that investment, but his daughter was able to graduate from UC Berkeley for undergrad and Harvard for her master's degree, and then go to law school and graduate from UC Berkeley. And I'm not a dreamer. I'm not somebody who, had the fear of having my father deported growing up or myself. However, I just think that this is a luxury that not all kids have. And to go to a school in my community and to see that kids are worried about more than just whether or not they're going to get grades to pass and graduate from high school is it's appalling. These are West Sacramentans. These are kids that deserve our attention and our protection. And even though I've stated my position in a previous council meeting with respect to our support of Sanctuary City, because this does have implications with respect to our public safety community and whether or not we have full buy-in from the members of our community in protecting and taking ownership of this community. I just think that this statement in item 14 is the least we can do to tell our community that we respect that they're here, that they make a contribution culturally, economically, and in a variety of different ways, but so that we can let our kids know that we support them being here regardless of their immigration status or the immigration status of their families. And so I'm really happy to see this here, and I appreciate your efforts, Ms. Robinson, and also of our Assistant City Manager, Amanda Berlin.
Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you, John, and I thank Council Member Orozco for bringing this to the attention and to our agenda today. It is an important, it's an important statement we make in the community, that we stand up for everybody in our community, including those dreamers. And I'm very happy to be supporting this today. I want to thank you for bringing it to the attention of council and to the agenda today. We have made a statement before regarding this, and I think it's something we'll continue to do as those opportunities and threats that to our community continue to occur. So I 100% support this and appreciate the efforts to bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. think, well, I know we all agree. And having been in DC on this issue last week, this resolution is very timely. This is what's pending before the Congress, and we've been pressing on them to act quickly. Obviously, we would have preferred that they act before the deadline for renewals that's this week. They have not. We've been pressing this week on trying to get an extension of the renewal provision. But for all the reasons that you said, and many, many more, this is a fundamental issue for our community. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dreamers in West Sacramento alone. And then there's all their family members. There are all their classmates. Some of them are older dreamers, and they're younger siblings. So it's just that they're a part of the fabric and always have been since they were young children in most cases, a part of our community, and it is our duty to protect them as well. And so I thank you for bringing the resolution forward, and I know we're all pleased to support it. So is there a motion on the consent agenda then?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Roscoe, seconded by Councilmember Ledesma. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. That brings us to item 17, which is consideration of Measure E allocations for reducing the community impacts of homelessness, repairing city streets, procuring a software license to facilitate improved qualitative analysis of the community impacts of Measure E and other projects, and implementing bicycle and trail improvements. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening. During the consent portion of tonight's agenda, the council approved amendments to the Universal Measure E policy document that was originally approved by the council on September 20th. So the purpose of this report is to request council consideration of funding proposals that are consistent with the new policy and designed to create community impacts in 4 categorical areas that are identified in Measure E, which include reducing the community impacts of homelessness, repairing city streets, enhancing the use of smart technologies, and implementing bicycle, pedestrian, and trail improvements. I'll provide a brief overview of each proposal in my presentation. Then following my presentation, staff from the appropriate department can answer any detailed questions that the council may have about any of the proposed projects. So moving sequentially through the staff report, the first item is reducing the impacts of homelessness. This is 5 projects totaling a request of $442,540. The first component is to continue the homeless coordinator position through the end of the fiscal year, pending a search for additional funding. That's a $77,540 request. As noted in the staff report, the homeless coordinator position has been grant funded. To date, that grant expires at the end of the month, and this has been a position that's been integral to the success that the city's had in terms of reducing homelessness and reducing the impacts of homelessness. There's a number of statistics cited in the staff report in terms of the achievement here, but this is seen as an integral part of the city's efforts. So the goal here would be to keep the position going until staff can identify, hopefully, grant funding for it in the next budget. Next, there's 4 additional projects that include extra help, contract services, waste disposal, and operations and maintenance, all focused on enhancing and systematizing the city's cleanup efforts around homeless encampments. The total for those requests is $365,000, and the logic there is that historically, the city's had a lot of success with cleaning up those camps. There's been reductions in the number of complaints about the impacts of homelessness in the vicinity where those cleanups have been done. But historically, those have been accomplished either with one-time money or with money from other areas of the city's budget. So from a budgetary standpoint, the money used to implement those has been kind of non-existent. And as a result, those cleanups have been sporadic, and you tend to see a recurrence of the issues that caused the need for the cleanup in the first place. So the idea here is to systematize and make more regular and more responsive the type of cleanups that create those results. Next is repairing city streets. There's a $250,000 request. There's 3 projects here. First, preparing a pavement rehabilitation program. That's a $50,000 request. The idea there is to create a planning document that would enable the city to know where the appropriate areas are to make investments in repairing the streets, to do that intelligently. That plan facilitates additional grant applications in the future. Second item is a $100,000 request to design the State Streets Pavement Rehabilitation Project. That's the last component of the Measure K pavement rehabilitation program that was not implemented yet, and this money would be used for staff costs to design that program in-house, and that's a project that is not eligible for other grant funds. The third item would be to design the west end of West Capitol Avenue rehabilitation project. That would be for consultant services to design those improvements. That's a $100,000 request. So the impact we'd be looking for here would be to accelerate those projects and position the city to seek construction funding for those. Next item is related to the Smart City Framework. It's qualitative analysis software. This would be a $12,000 request for a one-year license with a company called Zensity that produces a software product that essentially analyzes social media feeds to develop a sense of the sentiment around certain issues. So this would be a software program that would allow the city to detect trends in public public opinion through an artificial intelligence engine-powered analysis of those posts. And the idea there would be to get a better qualitative analysis of the effectiveness of city programs, especially where that effectiveness is measured in part in community perceptions, and to do that in a way that didn't require surveys or meetings or overt expressions of opinion, but rather just passively listen to what people were saying. And the outcome we'd be looking for there would be to use those insights to develop better and more responsive programs to benefit the community. The last category project is bicycle, pedestrian, and trail improvements. That's 3 projects totaling $140,000. The first one is the Sycamore Trail Phase 1 Slurry Seal Project. That's $10,000. Kind of self-explanatory project there designed to extend the usability of that portion of the trail. Bicycle and pedestrian trails master plan to finish that planning document, $30,000. And then there's a $100,000 request for safety improvements along West Capitol Avenue, including crosswalks and similar improvements. So in total, we're proposing to spend about 26% of the city's projected Measure E revenues for the fiscal year, leaving the council the bulk of those funds to still dispose of other ways. We believe the proposals that we presented are compliant with the newly adopted Measure E policy. But, that being said, we recognize this is the first set of funding requests to come forward, so we welcome the council's guidance, both in terms of the appropriateness of the requests themselves and also how we formatted them for your consideration. So that's the end of my presentation. We have staff on hand from each of the relevant departments to answer your specific questions about specific items in the report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Are there questions for staff?
Yes.
Ms. Orozco.
I have a question for 2 different areas. John, if you could just, how do I explain to my neighbors in the state streets what the pavement rehab project actually is? Because it's not actually $100,000 that's going to go to concrete to repair the sidewalks directly. It's for a design. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, let me defer to Denix to come up and explain that.
Yes, the $100,000 is just for the design phase of it to get the project shovel ready.
Okay, what needs to be designed specifically?
The pavement and the drainage in that area, yeah.
I see. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you elaborate a little more? What do you focus on to happen in the area? So, because it's just by the mere title of it. To kind of
Right. For that, for those streets in that neighborhood, we need to go look at the pavement and see where we need to, in some places, we need to dig out and repair that section. Some places we just need to overlay. Some places we just need to do the crack sealing. And then also we need to make sure the drainage is flowing where it is not. We need to make sure we address that issue. And while we are doing that, we may have to address some sidewalk issues also, ADA issues. So this is just to design all that.
Okay. Then the other question I have, it has to do with the reducing community impacts of homelessness. Is that John?
So we'll have a member of the police department staff come up to answer that.
Great. Thank you. First off, with respect to the requests, do we expect, just educate me here, with respect to the $365,000 that's proposed for cleanup and enforcement, is this something that we expect to be an ongoing request for years on out? If we stopped this next year and this money wasn't allocated, would we then just have a pileup of trash?
Well, our hope is always to find alternative funding sources, and we will continue to do that, but without finding alternative funding sources, yes, to a certain extent, the enhanced efforts that we're going to be able to conduct with this funding would not be able to, we wouldn't be able to do it anymore. That's correct.
Okay. I don't have any objection to this proposal at all. I I just wanted to reiterate, and not to beat a dead horse, but I really, a few months ago, I brought up a program that I found to be beneficial both to the participants in the program as well as I think that there would be positive outcomes for the community. And I would love for Wiz to look into that, maybe not this time around, but keep it on the radar. But the Downtown Streets Team project that I've seen personally in other jurisdictions, it seemed to be working quite well, but it really did utilize the people who would be causing the problem, who might be the people that are the culprits that are discarding their trash and not in the receptacles, but on the streets, and having them do the cleanup. And it was, there is the investment cost. Then I think about, the investment of $365,000 would be even in excess of what it would to start it up. That's not to say that we would be the people that would put all of that money in, but rather leverage some and maybe do partnerships with businesses and maybe other jurisdictions like Sacramento County or even Yolo County. But to have people who are on the streets being not employed, but rather working for their community in exchange for gift cards that they could use to help better their situation. And I mean, I know we've had some meetings about the program, but if this is something that, say hypothetically, one county, maybe Sacramento County or Yolo County or other parties that we're working with could be coming in and we're working in partnership with these other entities, this could be a smaller investment, but also have an outcome of having people learn skills of self-sufficiency and other job-related skills, while at the same time we're able to have a sustainable community beautification, which I think would I remember hearing one participant in the San Jose Downtown Streets Team project say that when she goes out into the field and she's picking up trash, she'll actually knows the people who threw that trash down and say, hey, Cindy, why don't you pick that up? I'm the one that has to pick that up after myself. Not you, Cindy, specifically, but you're looking at me. So, but I really liked the model, and I really think that we should consider programs like that. I mean, that's had tremendous success in the Bay Area. I think it's in 4 or 5 different cities. So,
We definitely look at it, absolutely.
great. Thank you.
Mr. Ledesma?
Thanks. Just by way of just form, I do have a question on some specific items. Just by way of form, I appreciate the discussion and the way you analyze, provide a background discussion of each of the proposals. And then we have to refer back to the appendix to get a more thorough discussion. Might consider keeping them together.
Gotcha.
And so that way we're looking at one on the flip, which I'm doing at the moment. So a minor pet peeve. Also, there's, on the reducing the community impacts, the homelessness specific, so we're asking for $442,000, and we've allocated, I think $500,000 is the annual expenditure plan for reducing impact. Is that right? Is that how much we've programmed, or at least for reducing impact?
Yes, up
Yeah.
to.
Up to. So is the 442, I mean, we can't, I don't know who this is a question for, but we can't plan for cleanups, right? That the messes occur when they occur,
Right.
and so I'm just trying to get a gauge of it. Is the 442 and up to amount that we have?
So based on the cleanups that we've had in the previous 2 years, we kind of tried to estimate how many we thought we could get done with our current staffing, what we're doing in the L&Ls, what we're doing in the CFDs, what we do at the port and our partners. So we took our current staffing and the current level of service, and then what we thought we could increase it to in the open spaces. So that's part of the additional funding. But the other component that we're launching this year is almost like a hybrid of the program that Councilmember Orozco alluded to. This is a task force that would be put together specifically to target the public spaces, West Capitol Avenue, Sacramento Avenue, litter removal, debris removal, washing sidewalks, but more importantly, a rapid response team so that when the chief calls and says, hey, we have a cleanup on aisle 7, they're at aisle 7 immediately, and we're not having to wait the 2 weeks. So we're in there to clean those sites up immediately with a task force that's rapid response, so to speak, so that, the camps aren't getting really built up, which actually costs us more money as people get more entrenched in these sites. So it's kind of a two-prong approach. The first is actually increasing the current open space cleanups to a level that we think we can handle with our staffing. And then the second is formulating this rapid response team for public space.
Okay.
I hope that addresses your question.
It does, because I'm
Okay.
trying to understand that back to, without this, we're still doing a base level of cleanup through other
Correct.
mechanisms.
Correct. So we do have a certain amount of funding in our current general fund budget that's through the Parks Department, where we clean up our parks, we clean up our open spaces on a regular basis, but it's more for vegetation management, and tree limbing and those sorts of activities. So if somebody set up a huge camp in a park and we had to go in and clean it up, we're not budgeted for that in the parks budget, in the general fund budget, so that would be something we'd have to eat and absorb and, take a dime from over here to help pay for it over there. So this does allow us to do an increased level of service when those issues arise. We also do vegetation management, which is a huge part of this program, making sure that open space and parks are, they're limbed up, the grasses are cut, so there's not places for people to hide and to set up these camps in the first place. So it allows us to provide a higher level of service for that. But we do use landscaping and lighting dollars, community facility district dollars. We, again, partnered with the port quite heavily last year in several areas. So some work would continue, but not at the level that we did last year, if this funding wasn't appropriated.
And it adds the $100,000 for the rapid response.
Right, the
They did.
100,000 is for that would be for rapid response and some extra help for the open space cleanups.
Okay. And on the homeless coordinator, funding this through the rest of the fiscal year, are we identifying, are we making progress towards finding other grants to supplement that?
Currently, is funding sunsets at the end of this month. It's through CDBG money. We would look for replacement monies, and to this point, there's none available. We'll continue to keep looking for that. And so that's our expectation, that's our hope, but the reality of it is that at this point, we're not finding anything readily available to us.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I think on the repair city streets, where's Denix, I'm sorry. So it is having to do, I think, kind of my question here is, as we move forward, at least my opinion, as we move forward on, this was the one we kind of, at least I saw as kind of fairly programmatic. There's road repairs, you got to do certain work, and we understand there's got to be staff time from your department allocated to this. So the reason I asked the question, I'm really appreciative you asked the question, is we got to understand what the process is for you as you begin to leverage E for these programs. It's just got to make, I love the way Councilmember Orozco put it, is what do I tell my neighbors? We're paying for somebody to make a design. I can look and see, but having, we've got to be able to explain how we leverage these dollars, and they're going to be, so as the next step, you have the designs in place. I know we've talked about how we can, this is talking about leveraging SB1 funds as well. So I'm just trying to make sure you connect the dots in terms of this is almost a startup seed money to get the process going.
Correct. So this $100,000 will allow us to design, and the finished product of that will be a set of plans which identifies street by street and say what type of treatment we are going to do for each segment of this street. So that's so that the contractor can bid on the plans. So that is a finished product of this ask. These set of roads are not eligible for any other grants like state or federal grants because they are designated as local streets, and therefore we have to use either city money or city money that is within the city's control, which is SB1 or Measure E or any other money that we have.
Right. We had talked about E being kind of the last dollar in for these types of, or at least staff costs. So is there other, this work could not be done under some other budget item we currently have? There's no road.
Correct.
right,
There is
road
no
fund
other budget item for this project, correct.
Okay.
And we are using the SB1 money to fund the staff as much as possible, not the Measure E when needed. But this one is, because the design is done in-house, all it is, it's 100% staff cost for the design.
Okay.
When we go to the construction phase, we'll contract it out, and then the contract will.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay. Ms. Sandin?
So I think in general, I think this package of proposals kind of hits a mark in terms of what I think the community's kind of expecting from us with the Measure E expenditures. I do agree, I think, with my colleague, Ms. Roscoe, just in terms of, I want to be kind of inspired by some of the things or some new things, but I also know we have these huge needs here. And I think folks in the community are expecting to see, okay, we said we were going to do something in terms of managing and dealing with homelessness. We said we're going to look at the roads, and I think I might have been the one in the budget, when we were having the budget discussions, that said I would be much more comfortable with the planning coming from Measure E, because I think that then sets us up to be able to get other funding that might be out there. So that, to me, would be an okay use of Measure E funding, because that's kind of pre-leveraging. When you have the plan, then you can look for what might be out there and what other funding might be available. So I guess I'm comfortable, and I know there's been a lot of work with the staff team to kind of hone this and get this right for us. I can tell you that the Zen City idea is really intriguing to me. It's a little scary for me for some reason. It's just, I think, the confidentiality issues and how that's managed, but it's a pretty minor expenditure, and I think we should be trying to test and do new things here, and I think that's the innovative nature of the city. I think we could do some interesting things with that software, but I'd be interested in learning a bit more. So I think in general, I'm comfortable, and I just hoping that in future years that they'll be, I think, comfortable and inspired and excited. So that's kind of where I'm at with this set. But I do think the community's expecting this kind of work coming from us with the Measure E funds. So thanks to the staff team for the work.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Chief McDonald, quick question. So on the homelessness, I think this package of items, I think, fits nicely in what the city should be doing in terms of this, the homeless issue. Obviously, it's a bigger picture than this. There's a housing issue and there's a service issue, which is not really the city's function, although I understand the city is looking at different type of housing options. But one of the things other jurisdictions are doing, particularly in homelessness, is trying to identify problem people, that 5% of the people create 90% of the problems. And is that something that Mark or whoever is going to be the homeless coordinator, along with the police department, is going to be looking at?
Short answer to that is yes. I do want to back up just a little bit and just say that this what we're doing in this expansion here that we're presenting to council is really stepping on the shoulders of a program that has been, by and large, very successful in the open space. And by that, I mean services first. That's key. It's a big deal for us, not only because it's the right thing to do, but it also lays an appropriate foundation for anything else that we do. Secondly, enforcement, and we're finding that when we provide enforcement, we actually are moving more people towards services, so it's an interesting juxtaposition. But also the cleanup behind it, and when we're able to maintain that clean space, then we don't have people repopulating those locations. And so what we're looking for is more consistency in maintaining those cleanups. The reason I bring that up is because we are experiencing significant increases in personnel, or rather in a drop in our homeless count, particularly in the open space arena. Yet that flies in the face of this perception, at least that's been stated on more than one occasion, that homelessness has never been this bad. I'm not entirely certain I know really what the focus is on that, but I do know that we have not been putting as much focus in what we're referring to as the public space, which is West Capitol, Sac Ave, and things like that. And so this whole goal is really to migrate that open space concept of operations and also move it toward the inner city. I am intrigued by Councilmember Orozco's statements. I do believe that this is the feed thing, and then we can try to see if we can either enhance our efforts through that program or something like that, and maybe conceptually, switch it. So that's really the primary focus of cleanups. I think that's probably kind of optimistic, but I agree with it in concept. What you're referring to, Mr. Johansson, is something we've already been doing. We've already been identifying what our top 10 is. We've been working with the DA's office to the extent that, enforcement applies. But we've been focusing on those particular individuals. And there's a number of ways in which you can kind of tabulate that, whether or not they are responsible for significant calls for service, or they're the most at risk, which aren't necessarily the same thing. So it's not as clean as pick those top 10, but if you were to speak with Mark, who I would like to laud in public, quite not only a good function for our city, but that particular individual is just really hitting the mark really well. He would speak to this effort to try to identify who are the most in need, and also the ones that have the greatest impact on us as a city in that regard.
Great, thank you.
May I comment?
Just one other for Denix. On this, the rehabilitation program, will that include a timing queue?
Yes, so the first phase of that is our consultant will go out, look at the pavements and assess the pavement condition index. So at that point, we'll come back to the council and we'll present that, what we found out, the condition of the pavements, and then we would come up with a program, a multi-year program, looking at the pavement, we'll package them into projects. So this is where we think the first project should be, and the second and so on. And so there'll be a timing, year one, we want to do this, year two, we want to do this, and so on.
Yeah, I think in kind of augmenting what the other council members have said on outreach to the public, in most cases, folks that know where their street sits in the grand scheme of things is very good information. If there's any way that if there is timing of these things, it might be publicly available. So people could see, well, when's the last time my street has been resurfaced, or when is it going to be resurfaced again? We can kind of roughly show what the queue is, and it may be, of course, variable, but at least they'll have an idea that it's in the queue. We are going to be taking care of it. To show this kind of programmatic method that we have, I think might be an idea.
So that's the reason for coming up with a multi-year program, so you'll see a bunch of roads in each of the years, so we'll know.
Yeah, but then make it public as well. Find a way to make some kind of public interface in that program. Right. Everything that looks good.
Ms. Roscoe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, just a comment on that. And yeah, Denix, if you ever need a workout, the state streets has got an obstacle course called our sidewalks, like tires. I'm done with nothing further on Denix. I was going to just comment on the chief's comment. I am optimistic. I am, and maybe it's because I'm a first-year council member, but maybe it's because when I went over to San Jose, I saw some positive externalities to a program that fueled that optimism, and a lot of it was the fact that folks felt for the first time that they were recognized by their community as being contributing members. And it was a pride and a sense of self-worth and a break in a cycle of idleness that some folks had experienced for many years. And also some level of productivity, and people would, they were identifiable orange shirts, or depending on what team they are on. So you might have, a team that cleans up trash, you might have a team that paints walls. But people in the community were responding very favorably to them being out there and visibly beautifying the community. And that, to me, is a tremendous positive externality that could improve the complexion of our city, as well as give members of the community who are looking for a visible change that would give them at least some hope that we're moving in a positive direction. So that's behind my optimism.
Oh, I share your optimism in that area. Please let me restate my position. When I say that we may be optimistic, what I'm referring to is that we still need to have a systematic approach to this, but I share your optimism.
Great.
Yes.
All right. I concur with all the comments. All the key issues have been raised on all the items. I did want, so I'm going to only pick on the $12,000 one because it's the cheapest. And I'm not picking on it, John, actually, in that way, just to pick up on some of the comments that Councilmember Sandine made around what's happening in this small project. And this Zen platform is the one that Mr. Johannesson and I have been working with the startup from Tel Aviv, Israel, on since June. Or maybe May, as part of the council's strategic plan intention to try to explore alternative ways of civic engagement and around the user experience, especially for citizens. And this is a promising tool in that regard as a way to use experiences, moods, other things that are already being expressed in public forums, to the extent that they are public, by people without having to come to a meeting or write a letter or what have you, and to allow us to do that in a way that's not about asking for people's opinions necessarily. So the fact that people we're seeing a lot of posts around trash and bike lanes. It doesn't mean that people have to have an opinion about our street sweeping schedule, but simply that this is their daily experience and their daily pain point, and we can see that is occurring before it becomes an issue around a specific city policy issue. So it allows us to identify things that are part of the daily experience that are happening in the community. It is through artificial intelligence, the spidering of the tweets and the Facebook posts and the Nextdoor posts and everything else. So what we are working with the startup. This is one of the reasons why this is only a $12,000 project, even though I think if they knew our actual population and they weren't giving us this partnership arrangement, we'd be spending over $100,000 on the platform. But we're only spending $12 because we're essentially a development partner in this process. Because we have identified and are working with them on a whole range of issues that they haven't scratched the surface around, that we know because we do civic engagement on a daily basis. So issues around privacy, around how the data gets used here in City Hall, who has access to what level of data, how often you're sampling it, how much of it is on city servers and subject to Records Act requests and that sort of. So all of those issues are the kinds of things that we are working with them on to try to explore, but really to try to tap the power that may potentially be there to provide a good alternative to civic engagement. So I'm encouraged by doing this. I definitely support moving forward with it as a way to try a different approach in that space that might give us some additional insights, and I know that's been an interest of the council as well. So with that, if there's no, Mr. Ledesma?
Yeah, I just have a couple other comments. So just again, in terms of, this is new to us all, and there's questions coming out to department heads, at least my observation. But part of what I was getting at is as we get better at this, the way we get better as us, questions we're asking is what kind of impact is this, your cumulative ask is going to have? You discussed in the second portion the theory of change. And we had talked about at some point kind of the criteria that we need to, or at least we're looking for, what kind of impact would this have in our community, and when will people feel it? So I'll ask staff as you come forward on your recommendations for spending on this. These are generally within, in my view, within the realm of what we were talking about. And my questions about the homeless coordinator, I just want to be clear, is just around ensuring that as we begin to look at these funds, this doesn't become a permanent home for something we maybe could find another place for, but can continue leveraging these funds for more expansive projects to maybe where Councilmember Roscoe's are articulating. I'm trying to keep that long view in mind. The other part too is just back on the impact and criteria and the theory of change, John. As these agenda items come forward, it's just really important you tell the story where you're going with this. What is the strategy? This is the beginning part of it. The Chief's, your point around this is building on a foundation of what we've been able to do with the limited budget you have, and we were robbing Peter to pay Paul to make sure we clean it up. But to me, the most exciting thing about this is the establishment of this rapid response team, and how that's a kind of deploying such a team that has real value to the community, and something we can go back. As part of our expression in the e-policy was around, we've got to say Measure E is impacting you and your neighborhoods here. And it's hard to say that, with just description is extra help. That's not a good descriptor for it. Packaging is a little something I'm interested in. It is around, but boy, we're going to spend $100,000 on a rapid response team. They're going to go in a day be in an open space that isn't cared for today. That's impactful to a neighborhood. That's impactful to the folks, that they see it and they know that their Measure E dollars have been put to work because of that investment. So I ask you to think that way. Denix, in the same way, I hate to pick on you again on this issue, but just, again, saying this is a design plan, it's very difficult for us to kind of tell the story where those E dollars are going. It is the initial investment to get the plan going. I would also say, and I don't know how the rest of the council feels or staff feels about it, but it should be a little different than our typical CIP sort of process in my mind, into where we're going to do a big plan and everything is kind of tiered out for years. I kind of want to see the dollars start hitting the streets, the pavement, sooner than doing a grand plan for everything. I think we have, I think Councilmember Orozco's point of, I've walked the streets with you back whenever that was, and yeah, it's an obstacle course, and they feel it. So I just want to make sure, as you articulate these funding requests and proposals to us, and we've said this in the last go-around, that this was, you're trying to win us over and win the community over. We want to invest our dollars where it's going to have impact. That's part of at least what I want to see is, when will I see pavement? I get it. We've got to seed the design. We've got to seed so you can go leverage other funds. But that's kind of where we need to take these.
Right, and that's why we are proposing, staff is proposing 3 different things. While we are working on this plan, which lays out the next multi-year program, we are also getting a couple of projects ready so that you can go to construction and the projects will hit the streets sooner than waiting for this multi-year plan that'll come up later.
I agree. So it's just important for at least me,
right,
that as you say it, you kind of articulate that in the staff report, and that we have a discussion on theory of change, what's going to change, but it's we have to think that way in terms of when might we see it. This will lead to X and Y, and it just helps us connect the dots versus we're having a milestone in a year-long project. If that makes sense. And then the only other, I thank you, Mr. Mayor, because I really did not understand what the $12,000 spend was going to go for. So I appreciate, I didn't want to be the dumb one to ask. But it does make sense, and those are the kind of things we should be investing in to help further the city. So those are the only comments I had. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want, now that you've raised a couple others, I wanted to just in terms of the format. So if I had to pick a winner on some of the sections, because it's a brand new approach, I thought the winner on the performance metrics section was the community impacts of homelessness. It actually provided metrics that we could look at in terms of numbers. Several of the other ones were things like, we will do what we said, we will do the tasks that we said we were going to do. That's not really that's not a performance metric that's related to the outcomes, or we will look to see whether it was effective or not. That's also not, we as a council and the community can't say, yeah, we did it or not, whereas the homelessness one laid out, we're going to look at the number of people who are homeless, we're going to look at the number of homeless-related complaints, we're going to hold ourselves to some metrics, and that's the purpose. Doesn't mean we're always going to hit them. But we will only learn if we lay out in advance what we're expecting to change in the world. So I thought that one won in that category. On the theory of change category, which is probably one of the hardest ones, I thought the winner was the Zen City one, in part because if the theory of change is just, here's why we think this is going to work, that's not a theory of change. And a real theory of change should be exposing some of your assumptions about how other actors in the world will react, what other changes will be happening, what assumptions that you've made need to hold. And the Zen City one said, look, but we're going to have to watch out for this because people might abuse it this way, and we're going to have to do these other things because it may not be all bunnies and roses. And a good theory of change should be honest in that way. Otherwise, it's not that useful if it's just another chance to make the same argument around why you're doing the thing that you're proposing to do. So these were great. All of them were great in terms of this is our first step, and I think we only adopted this framework 10 minutes ago. Right. And so folks were adapting to it. But just in terms of feedback about how, for me at least as a council member, which ones were the most useful in terms of advancing the kind of the objectives that we had laid out in the document. So. All right, now if there's no further discussion, is there a motion on the item?
Second the item?
Somebody move it? I heard you both second it, but. All right, so moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Councilmember Sandin. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to item 18, which is workshop on the Kids Home Run Policy Framework.
Good evening. My name is Ian Winbrock, and I'm the Program Manager for the Kids Home Run Initiative. The purpose of this workshop is to provide an update on the Kids Home Run and facilitate a council discussion on potential policy concepts for inclusion in a Kids Home Run policy document. While the purpose of this workshop is not to facilitate deliberation on specific policy questions, staff would like council direction on which policy concepts to include in future workshops on specific Kids Home Run programs, so that staff can provide council with a detailed analysis and background in a later staff reports that will facilitate their deliberations during those workshops. During the November 16th, 2006 council meeting, council adopted funding targets for the Kids Home Run in order to quickly implement the initiative and its programs. This included funding targets for each of the 4 programs that are part of the Kids Home Run: universal preschool, college savings accounts, career-ready internships and digital badges, as well as the West Sacramento College Promise. During the 2017 Strategic Planning Retreat, Council gave policy direction to staff on specific priorities for implementation, including execution of the reimbursement agreement for the fee-free component of the West Sacramento College Promise, marketing and branding of the Kids Home Run, data systems integration, and philanthropic fundraising. During the March 15th, 2017 City Council meeting, Council approved a series of implementation actions for the Kids Home Run, including authorizing the city manager to execute a reimbursement agreement with the Los Rios Community College District for the fee-free component of the West Sacramento College Promise. During the April 19th, 2017 City Council meeting, Council approved an issuance for the Kids Home Run branding and marketing request for proposals. And during the June 28th, 2017 meeting of the City Council, Council considered and awarded a contract with KP Public Affairs for Kids Home Run branding and marketing. Since implementation of the Kids Home Run in early 2017, staff, in coordination with external partners, have been able to achieve modest programmatic success, laying the groundwork for future programmatic growth. This success includes securing over $100,000 in grant funds to implement the Kids Home Run programs, an inaugural class of 47 West Sacramento students receiving the fee-free component of the West Sacramento College Promise, the hiring of 24 West Sacramento students representing 9 of the 10 WUSD available career pathways into internships with 4 different local employers, as well as the creation of 30 digital badge credentials that embodied work experiences ranging from water treatment to traffic and transportation engineering. Although a modicum of progress and success has been achieved among Kids Home Run programs, in order to grow the initiative, a policy document which includes a framework for each of the Kids Home Run programs consistent with the Measure E universal policy document needs to be established. This document will provide staff with sufficient guidelines to submit program funding requests to council at later dates that achieve policy objectives and performance metrics established by the council. There's a substantial amount of policy concepts in this report that staff would like council to provide direction on whether or not they should be included in future workshops. In order to streamline the discussion, I wanted to name what pages the proposed policy concepts for inclusion in future workshops are located. Data systems integration concepts are located at the bottom of page 2. Philanthropic funding concepts are located at the middle of page 3. College Promise concepts are located at the bottom of page 4. Career-ready internships and digital badge concepts are located at the bottom of page 5. And college savings account policy concepts are located at the top of page 6, while universal preschool policy concepts are located at the bottom. That concludes my presentation, and staff are available for questions during your discussion.
All right, are there questions for staff? This is an enormous report. With that, even for those of us that have been knee-deep in it, there's a lot here. As Mr. Winbrock saying, the request is not for us to answer. All the questions that are in here are not to be answered tonight. They're for the purpose of identifying which questions are we interested in continuing to have here in future workshops. So I think that's where our focus is for the evening. I think these are a lot of the right questions. There's probably another 3 times of this many of policy questions that are emerging and that will emerge as we're proceeding. But they are mostly the right ones. I think a lot of them, for me, the framework to guide the answers to a lot of them are attending to the system, the ecosystem of the Kids Home Run. It will be very tempting as we go through, both for us and for our partners, for folks to say, well, but there's this preschool that's almost quality. Would you really want to say no, that you're not going to support this preschool that's almost quality? Or there's a student who's kind of interested in the engineering pathway, but kind of drops in and out of the classes, isn't that serious about it. But do you really want to say no to them? There's a student who's not ready for college, requires 2 years of remediation. Do you really want to say that you're not really going to pay for their tuition? Right? There'll be these sorts of questions and pressure on us individually and collectively and from our partners to say, well, let's just let it happen. And the point of the integration of this program, and I think one of the reasons why it's being featured at the Federal Reserve tomorrow is because it is a fully integrated systemic approach that says, look, all of the pieces of this and all of the partners depend on fidelity to the whole thing. And so if you say, okay, no, we're not going to hold it necessarily to the career-ready pathway piece, well, then the quality of interns that we place with employers, their ability to add value at an employer's job site goes down, and the likelihood that that employer signs up to do it again next year diminishes. We send students to the Sacramento City College who are not prepared. We pay for their tuition. We've cost them time that they could be working or doing other things. We're actually hurting them in their lives if they don't finish a degree or a certificate. So we're not doing anybody a favor by saying go ahead and go even though you're not ready. And all the way along the line of the program. And so maintaining a level of fidelity to the system and to what the levels of quality and purpose here are, which are to make sure that young people have all these opportunities and that they're real, and with an eye towards college and career and apprenticeship and other forms of success when they become adults, using the research in order to undergird that. So I think laying those out as much as possible as you're starting to do in these questions will be really helpful going forward. So we're not just addressing many random requests and questions along the way about how to proceed. Because in general, I think we should stay. We've done that with the internship piece. We've done that with the preschool piece. We've stayed to a high standard of quality because we know that's what it takes in order for it to have an actual impact on that young person's lives. It's not about whether we feel good about it or not. It's whether or not are we actually making that infant or that high school student, are we demonstrably improving their life chances? And with that framework, it becomes a little simpler to deal with. The other is that we have a program that is the West Sacramento Kids Home Run program. And as opposed to simply we're a grant maker to other partners to do stuff. And so, the questions like, as we've addressed before, around, what's our relationship with Los Rios, and should we be paying for their administrative costs of us providing free tuition for their students so that they can grow in enrollment, which is their own mission, or not? We agreed to do that to kind of get it started and get moving, but it's not really sustainable, and we can't do that with all the partners, so we probably should be unwinding that as well. But really thinking about the fact that we're asking partners to come to the table who have their own interests in the success of this work and should be making their own investments along with us, because the voters have been incredibly generous through Measure E in supporting this effort, but it's not unlimited in terms of the resources that are going to be required. And if we're successful, or when we're successful, and many more young toddlers are entering kindergarten ready to learn and ready to succeed, and they finish high school and they get a job and they go to college, those things are going to cost us more money, hopefully. Hopefully there'll be fewer dropouts, and school is going to cost us more, and college is going to cost us more. That's our objective. But that's going to require all of us, all the partners contributing in that way. So I do think these are the right questions. I don't know that I would bring back the details of the data system as an example to council. I mean, for me, the policy objectives are, we want to be able to do meaningful evaluation of what's happening. We want to make the handoffs as easy as possible, and we want to give the young person as much customization in the process as we can. So the extent to which, for me, the policy objective is to have a system that if we're placing, that we want to use the data system to make sure that her progression through preschool to collecting digital badges to internship to college to scholarship, all of that accounts for her own experiences and her own achievements and her own skills and her own needs and her own deficits to the maximum extent possible, so that she's not, so each partner in the handoff is not experiencing for the first time ever, oh, Cindy has a reading disorder, or Cindy has this other asset that we're not aware. Cindy's passionate about downtown streets homelessness programs, right? The extent to which we can inform all the partners in the process about that young person's expectations, which is really the foundation of what the digital badging system is about. But the data system, to me, is mainly about that and about evaluation. And if those kind of overarching policies can then help to drive as much of the rest of the answers to these questions as possible without having to come to us and say, should there be a city unique identifier, or should we use the school district one or some other one? Because that's going to be way over. Even for the educators on the council, that's going to be way over our heads. So, just to get us started, Mr. Ledesma? Ms. Cindy? Cindy?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we've been often on subcommittee on several of these issues, so.
Oh, no, thank you, Mr. Wambach. This is really well done and super, as the mayor mentioned, really comprehensive and very, I think all the right questions are being asked here. I was trying to come up with these kind of larger concepts that maybe cut across a lot of the sections. And so for me, I think with regard to all of these, broad access to West Sacramentans is really important with the intention of expectations of outcomes, for all of these areas and qualities. I think mayors, as you mentioned, in terms of the metrics collected, they definitely are needed, again, like related and connected, but with the privacy considerations in mind. So I think I stumbled on that section of questions about how we would scope that kind of, I don't know that we have the expertise within council about how we would come up with the actual data collection, scoping of the project. So we may need to refer that out to some experts that could help us, where we could get the data to the students and the families, but that we actually have whatever kind of California privacy requirements there are, that we're aggregating them so that we can report them out and understand and hone. So that was another, again, I was trying to cut through all the different areas. And then I think as much as the universality of the programs, universal in nature, I think opt-in first in some, I was trying to, the question stumped me about the savings accounts, and would you require that, or would you make it opt-in? And I thought, gosh, that means we'd have to open a bank account for someone, you need private information. And so some of those questions you really got me thinking about how we act as a city and what are our boundaries. So I think we need to be able to offer these and offer them broadly and do our best to get the word out to families that they're available. But I don't know that kind of requiring or forcing some of the programs that we're offering, I don't know that we can, force into a home. So I was struggling a bit with that, again, kind of going between all the areas. But for me, again, broad access to West Sacramentans, I think folks are talking about this a lot. When I am in the community, people are talking about the home run. People are talking about what we're doing here in West Sacramento. And so I think trying to help us get this going and actually asking the hard questions will be important. I think we're going to have to roll this out as you have laid out that calendar, because we will, I think, have to dig in over the course of the next several months to actually connect all of the work together. But I think you've done a lot of heavy lifting here to get us started.
Yeah, one of the reasons we have to be careful about the scoping and the access issues is the financial modeling under Measure E assumed a completion and success orientation, a quality orientation. So, for example, we could say, one of the requirements, one of the assumptions in Measure E was that we would require full-time enrollment in college. We would require having a declared major, essentially, for a short term. If we were to say, well, okay, it's fine if you only take 9 units, that would completely bust the budget on the tuition waiver in Measure E, and the research shows a majority of those students at 9 units would not complete a program. So it's both like what's the moral thing for the young person, but also when we fit this incredible thing, Kids Home Run, into the pocket of one third or less of Measure E. That was built with some pretty aggressive assumptions about how much it would be tailored. And so the communications, I know the marketing plan is underway, but we will have to be very clear very quickly around some of those requirements so that we aren't contributing to an environment where everyone's walking around, well, no matter what, everybody gets free preschool, even if everybody gets their preschool paid, and everybody's going to Harvard tuition free, and there's no rules and no requirements. It's just it's an entitlement for everybody. We can't even come close to affording that. So getting some of these questions locked down, some of them we already have answered, but then figuring out how to meter out the communications around that without being a big old downer on the program, because it's still powerful, but it has the potential to spread like wildfire out of our control if we don't set the right parameters from the outset that we can't afford. Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ian, for the presentation. The program for me is always, as it's come forward and through Measure E, this isn't my area of kind of expertise, and certainly from a policy perspective, it gets complicated really fast because we're talking multiple levels of programs within the program, right? And so to be honest, it was a little daunting reading the report, only because there's so many facets of it, and you raised really good questions that frankly I hadn't thought of when it came regards to this. So my concerns are really, as you bring forward, and I think it has to do a little bit with the mayor just kind of alluded to, as a new city service that we're providing, a new city program that we are providing, and to the point you were making earlier about how we would go forward on philanthropic funding and how the success needs to build on that. I'm really concerned, or I would say concerned. I'm really interested in making sure that at every program level, there's 6 different programs we're talking about, college savings accounts and the data systems integration, college promise, that we find the right, how do we know each of those are working? And how do we have the right operational underpinnings sort of dialed in on those, and the right level of scoping so that I just want to be really good at them, even if we start a bit small early on. Maybe that's counter to what you're saying in terms of scaling it. Some of the questions you had that kind of raised a little bit of red flag. Should we expand into other parts of Los Rios? Should we do those put the flag up for me, because I think I want to get really good at it, whatever we're doing in each one of these programs first, because it's at the end of the day, our residents and our neighbors. We will have a new neighbor coming in from my family who came here because one of the reasons she's coming here, my niece and her new husband, they're coming here because they heard about some of this, and this is a great selling point, and they've got to understand that it works. So that's where I'm kind of coming from. So as we begin to frame out what the policy looks like, there's a bit of me, I'm not interested in the operational mechanisms you're using, but in the framework, so that we can, okay, where are we going to focus, and where do you need where we prioritize our policy decisions, so that I know we can not be distracted by the other parts of each one, so that we can get really good at delivering and the college savings account, for instance. That's a wonderful type of program, that financial institution. We would develop a really good relationship with whoever we might bring in on that is deployed in a way that's understandable and easy to access, and they can immediately feel the opportunity. How do we get the college promise even here to be, is it working? How do we know that? How do we know parents And kids that are coming to it are getting, taking advantage of it, are seeing that money, or not, they won't see the money, they'll see a refund or whatever, however it gets implemented. Is it working correctly? That's kind of the framework I want to make sure as we get into year one, that we're really caring for that, and they're starting to feel some of the impact. I just don't understand, it's just me, even though I oversee technology and systems in my private sector world, I need a little better understanding of what the data systems integration piece. Maybe I need to spend more time with you to understand what we're trying to get at, in terms of I know where the data will go, and I understand what we might get from it, but I'm trying to understand sort of what are the desired outcomes we want from that. And some of the policy framework, when we talk about how should the city identify each student's data, how we, I'm sorry, I have my glasses on though. Should student identify, 5 and 6 were kind of questions that I circled in terms of, that's the criteria, that's what I'm trying to get to, is where are we going to see the outcomes of this that are going to make me feel, and whatever work we need to do to get there for the integration, are we going to, or do we have to address? And I'm trying to get to that piece. And so I kind of think about it in terms of a guiding principle around as we approach the policy, is around try to keep it simple and let's get really good at it. And then we got year 2 where we can build on those successes. Because then I think, as we progress and get really good at it, we'll build a sustainable program that will build success. We'll find more opportunities for fundraising through philanthropic mechanisms. They'll see those early successes, and that will help grow the program more, so we can think about expansion, have staff, and have all the mechanisms, so more programs available to it. So that's the way I've been thinking about it, Ian, and again, I'm sure that helps you provide it, but I'm just trying to figure out a way that at the end of the day, I know the policy choices, and if we can keep them so that we are really focused on, like I said, is we can take this early startup of a program and service and know that we're getting good with them. Much in the way we know, and when we deliver waste management services, we know if it doesn't get picked up one day, we hear about it, and there's mechanisms we know. This one I don't know, and that's where I want to get to, and what are the desired outcomes we want. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, so this program is basically, it's a way to engage kids at an early stage, to provide incentives and monitoring as they move through their education. At the end, to provide some kind of incentive for college. But one of the things I just wanted to, on the policy issue, some of the questions include, for example, does council believe any particular career pathway should be priorities for the internships, or the prioritization of acquisition of certain badge or skills? So the overall goal of this is to, I think, to match education with jobs, I think, regional jobs. Is that, I don't know if that's the policy, and if you're asking us on which careers are most beneficial, there's kind of a disconnect there. So I don't know if the purpose of this is to recognize that this region, for example, the medical sector or the technology sector, is going to have X number of jobs in 10 or 20 years. And so our job here is really to kind of engage kids in that, because otherwise we can have kids, all studying anthropology. And I have nothing against anthropology, but there's not a whole lot of anthropology jobs out there right now, particularly in this region. And you're looking at cultivating and creating interest in jobs that are going to be highly skilled, highly paid, starting from first grade to college, so 15 years or something like that. So is there that kind of connection between what the goal of this is, regional kind of jobs, education connection, or is it just kind of an education alternative for whatever pathway?
So I would say that the kind of overarching vision of the Kids Home Run, the way that I understand it is it's more of a workforce development initiative. How can we, going back to your conversation you had previously about a theory of change, thinking about the major drivers in the future of work, thinking about what industry sectors locally are going to be paramount and are going to be high wage, high growth, and that looking at the research base so that during future workshops, council could deliberate that based on the number of career pathways that we have, based on our definition of what a career pathway is, based on the local industries that are willing to offer internships as we've been outlined, because the research base shows that, having 8 weeks as opposed to 6, having 40 hours as opposed to 20, those are the ones that will yield a better skilled worker for an entry-level position. That would give council enough capacity and enough understanding to be able to deliberate on, yes, these are the skills that we want to be able to prioritize for the digital badges. Yes, these are the specific career pathways that we really think are going to drive the largest amount of entry-level careers once students are 18, or prepare them the most for college, and maybe create incentives for the school district as well to add new career pathways or combine old career pathways or enhance ones with specific classes that they might not currently have.
Yeah, I think for us to make an intelligent decision on policy on career pathways, we'd probably have to have a briefing. I mean, we all get regional briefings, business briefings, and seeing what's going on in the region. But, if we're being asked, I mean, from my perspective, I'm being asked to, kind of pick and choose career paths. I'd want to have a briefing at that time of, what does the outlook of this region look like in 10, 15, 20 years? Because then you kind of put it in perspective. And then, in terms of what is a qualified candidate, that's all the mechanics of what we're doing here. But in terms of what you're trying to develop, you're trying to develop a qualified candidate in 15 years. And so it's that end goal that, unless we have some specific information, I wouldn't know outside of just anecdotal or just what I've picked up outside.
I know one of the things I'm going to be saying at the Fed tomorrow is that the era of economic development agencies and cities trying to forecast 15 years out of workforce development data is over. That we've never been good at it, right? Even our own city has declared that we would be this hub of biotech. We would be the green tech city of America. We've all been through these exercises of declaring these things, and we're always wrong. And now with automation and artificial intelligence, the destruction of whole job categories that's pending much quicker than 15 years. It's much more about adaptability and a higher order of skills, and giving young people as many contingent choices as far into the future as possible. So rather than saying, okay, we know we're going to need a whole bunch of construction workers, therefore, for the next 15 years, let's focus on that. We do need that. That's a critical issue right now. But and a lot of folks will say, and then we know that it can't be automated. You can't possibly automate construction, but that's not true. Those are some people said we couldn't do autonomous vehicles. It is the practices are not strong yet, but the number of folks who are now experimenting with building entire houses, not just in the traditional prefab way, but doing all of the construction, loading onto an autonomous truck, and then plopping it onto a house plot in a subdivision, that's an extraordinarily real possibility. So even the things that we tend to think of as, plumber is always going to be good, may not be in that sense. And so I think trying to to put that into our forecast is going to be a pretty limited utility. On the other hand, a lot of this career pathway stuff for high schoolers, because what we're saying is that the internship is a key part of that, really it's going to be driven as much as anything by, if we're doing it right, by employers. By real-world employers right now, who are prepared to offer the internships with our help and our networking, and that's whoever we can get to the table. And we've been successful in a lot of those domains. But I think because to have a successful college and career pathway for a young person requires that the young person have some interest in it. Right, you're not going to force somebody who doesn't have any interest in engineering into an engineering pathway. You need a teacher or a few teachers that are willing to teach a curriculum in that space, who have tenure at the high school or at a high school here. You need to have companies that can hire them as interns, or public works departments that can hire them. You need all those things. So our ability to simply declare we're going to really focus on autonomous vehicle jobs only is not really there. So to me, that question is useful to pose other questions, but it's not really one for us to answer, like what are the sectors to focus on, because we don't get to choose. Basically, as a policy matter, it's going to be the sum of all the other parts of that ecosystem coming together properly. Other comments? All right, do you have sufficient direction? All right, great, thank you. Thank you. Then that brings us to item 19, which is a request for direction on the 2017 Mayor's Challenge application. Mr. Robinson?
Hello again. As the council is aware, the Mayor's Challenge is a competition that's sponsored by Bloomberg Philanthropies, and it's designed to accelerate local government efforts to solve the world's most pressing problems. The city's been invited to submit an application to the 2017 Mayor's Challenge competition, which was announced in June. And since June, staff's been working closely with the mayor to coordinate a series of input mechanisms that were designed to generate great ideas to serve as the focus of the city's Mayor's Challenge submittal. And those have been described to the council before, but briefly, they include a leadership charrette that was held in August that involved the executive team and the chairs and co-chairs of the city's advisory commissions. And the output from that process was a set of design parameters that went into the citywide survey that was administered. We did the survey itself, a couple weeks that was out. It got a lot of interest from the community. We advertised that on our social media channels. We ended up with 28 ideas, which was pretty good given the level of specificity that was required in the application. So we got 28 big ideas from the community and from staff from that. We had a Changemakers event that was facilitated by the mayor and brought together regional thought leaders from around the Sacramento region to do more ideation and develop more big ideas to kind of add on to the ones that were generated through the survey. And then most recently, we did an accelerator workshop that was actually facilitated by Bloomberg Philanthropies. And the purpose of that was really to kind of run us through some of the qualitative research methods that Bloomberg would like us to use while preparing the application, and also to give us the opportunity to refine some of our own ideas about a potential idea for concept for our application, and we chose the homeless-related domain for that. So as a result of this process, we came up with basically 3 families of ideas that have emerged as the most viable concepts around which the city might base its submittal to the Mayor's Challenge. And those are the Kids Home Run Student Success Database. That's summarized in your staff report. And the idea there would be to facilitate data sharing and analysis across multiple entities, you just heard about this, to improve educational and employment outcomes. And Ian Winbrock's probably the best versed on that if you have questions about that one. The second one would be a volunteer matching program that would be similar to kind of a Match.com or something like that for bringing together nonprofits and the city and other entities that might have volunteering opportunities for community members along to connect them with members of the community and to allow them to kind of organize themselves and find community members with mobility issues could find volunteering opportunities that might fit their abilities, or community members that want to work with kids but not animals, or whatever the case may be. It would facilitate matching between volunteers, and the outcome would be more volunteers, more things getting done in the community, and a better engagement between the city and the community. And the third idea related to reducing the impacts of homelessness, and the specific idea within that would be to create a city-affiliated nonprofit entity that could serve, among other things, as the payee for Social Security recipients who are required to have a third-party payee for their benefits. And that's kind of getting to some of the comments relative to the police chief, relative to the city's efforts. That's a group of people that, have been identified as, frequent users of our public safety services. So that would be an opportunity to kind of vertically integrate some of the city's services and become a little more closely involved in some of those people's lives and maybe nudge them towards some better life decisions. So in the staff report, you'll see that we're recommending the homelessness-related item as the city's submittal based on its focus on a ubiquitous issue that's affecting almost all cities and its replicability. But it should be made really clear that all of the ideas that are listed in this report, we think could form the basis for a viable Mayor's Challenge application. So by no means does the staff recommendation, is that meant to suggest that these other ideas are duds. And further, it should also be noted that regardless of whether any of these ideas is ultimately chosen as the Mayor's Challenge focus, these ideas and even some of the other ones that didn't make it to this point are potentially really useful, viable ideas that could be implemented locally outside the context of the Mayor's Challenge program. So it should be clear that not being selected for this particular application doesn't mean that the idea isn't good or that we shouldn't pursue it. And in fact, the council may be seeing proposals later from staff to implement some of these other items in that way. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is terrific stuff. I mean, these are really, these 3 proposals are just really remarkable and sort of, why didn't we, I mean, I want to say, why didn't we think of this before? Just that sometimes the best ideas just feel like they should have been there the whole time. And they're really addressing key issues that we're facing. And we were talking about the Kids Home Run as an example, and the idea of having the means for data-driven decisions and how we evaluate the issues regarding workforce development and mining that data is, I thought was a real contender. I am going to, this is great work, and I just want to applaud John, you and the mayor and everyone else that participated in this process and got to these suggestions. And we saw them early on in the first presentation as kind of ideas, and they weren't really as fleshed out as they are in the attachments today. But I just really these are great things. Any one of these brought up, I think, would be worthy of us sending to the competition. I do like the homelessness one best, because we do have, it solves kind of two issues for us, and one is obviously the homelessness one that we had a discussion about earlier, and it's a really unique idea of almost staring into the skid a little bit, right? You're saying propose to go upstream. Let's get really involved, which is, and it wouldn't be us necessarily, be a nonprofit that we would sponsor, but we get involved that way already to a degree on housing issues or whatever. So I'm not, I thought for in large part, this can address that, as well as the policy question we raised at the beginning of the year is how to address homelessness and mental illness, and what kind of role can we play in that, because this helps to address some of that. And I do like the idea. We have entities or other agencies that we've created for finance purposes, for housing purposes, and this one could make sense in a way if it's executed the right way and with the right amount of funding. It could be something that actually helps solve the problem and address it in a slightly different way for a city to be involved. So, but again, any one of these would have been a terrific choice in my mind. But I do like the homelessness one for that reason. It gets us. It provides sort of a framework of how we might get involved in that sort of in a different way, rather than just providing funding for a rapid response task force and the cleanup and the impacts and housing. This is a bit of a different solution that might bring more services to them and just not depend on the county for that. So, thank you.
Ms. Orozco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I wonder why we don't do Bloomberg powwows annually already. I mean, I know there's not like $1 million to offer folks to institute their ideas, but, the volunteer coordination piece, I thought that was very cool. I mean, Councilmember Sandine and I have had discussions previously where we were contacted by folks all the time who want to dedicate their time and energy toward doing something good for this community, but unless we have an opportunity at our fingertips right then, we just, the opportunity might be lost to collaborate with members of the community who really, really want to invest their time. And so even if we don't get that as a proposal, we should really look at how we get some type of system to, to connect all these resources, as we can't get it done by ourselves. That's for darn sure. I think we've all learned that. But I agree with Councilmember Ledesma. I think that attachment 3 with the reducing the impacts of homelessness is getting really at the core of what impassioned me about the other program that I talked about. And, I know that a substantial portion of SSI payments will go to a payee for doing absolutely nothing but cutting a check. And, when you're surviving on $1,200 or less, maybe even $950 a month, and $40 of that goes to a payee that hasn't done anything but give you the rest of the money, it's sickening, because it just exacerbates that person's problem, makes them a little bit more homeless for a period of that month, that they're not able to pay for a roof over their head. So I think that is a positive, a benefit. But I also like the incentives, or I guess for the lack of untoward behavior or for contributing. That does provide members an incentive to want to give back. And maybe there's going to be, in addition to those two things, there are other things that, we could add to that list to help folks, hopefully cycle out of the status of being homeless. But I'm really excited about this proposal, and I think it really does hit the target, and it's at least it's a jumping off point where we could even expand it further, if we're able to get it going.
Councilmember Sandin?
And I concur for the reasons my colleagues have shared. The homelessness one is really compelling, although for me also I know how much we need this database for the Kids Home Run. So I think that, I think all the proposals and all the ideas that you shared with us, I believe was at the last council meeting, was wonderful to hear all the creativity and the ideas in the community to make our community better. But I would concur going forward with the homeless one, but I also do think the database proposal could do well as well. I just think that there are other communities that, if they had our model, would also have a need for this. So I'm a little torn, but I can go in with the homeless proposal.
Comments? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree. The homeless, I mean, it looks like it's going to be fairly straightforward to implement. But in terms of the application, is that available at all?
We have a copy of it. I didn't include it in the staff report. I don't think it's publicly available, but we know what the questions are.
Yeah, maybe if you can give us a copy at some point. I'd just kind of like to see what the application looks like. And but I think, based on the 4 criteria here, it looks like the homelessness project would match all of those. I don't really know if it's not being implemented as proposed elsewhere, but.
Yeah, not that we've found, but that'll definitely need to be something that we research to make sure, because the idea that we submit has to be new.
Right, yeah. Yeah. All right.
Great. Well, I concur with all the comments about the process and the staff work and the quality of these 3 concepts. I like all of them for the reasons that have been said. The volunteer piece, and they all emerged from this process equally, right? This was not a linear development cycle. We got public solicitation. So, we didn't refer those into the changemakers group. Then we had a group of external changemakers and some city staff participating in a session. And then we did the Idea Accelerator, all as separate efforts with different things brought to the table. So some things we had to pick one topic for the Idea Accelerator, that was homelessness. But I say that only to say that each of these has been a favorite at different parts of the process, but the process was not all leading in a pipeline to an end. So they're all legitimate as part of what has been a pretty remarkable engagement process on a very, very fast timeline with lots of stuff and lots of people to juggle and people stepping up in order to make that happen. The Kids Home Run database, I think, has huge potential, both for us, because we already need to build it, both around a lot of these issues and around performance metrics and data-based decision-making that almost every city, especially any city that's thinking about being really engaged in the education and out-of-school learning and workforce development space, desperately needs. And a couple of cities have actually taken a run at this. As far as I know, nobody has succeeded. So it has enormous potential and replicability in other places, and it's essential to what we want to do. Like, we can't do the scholarship component of the Kids Home Run effectively if we don't build this kind of data system. It's not just about evaluation metrics. It's really about, does the thing actually work? So I think it's a critical need. The area I worry about on this one is whether or not we can actually pull it off. And whether we can be confident that we will pull it off by the October 19th deadline. Not pulling it off, but achieve confidence by October 19th. But if we could, I think this is a very strong candidate on most of the other indicators, and I think we can be pretty sure it's not actually happening somewhere else. The volunteer matching was, I think, the favorite in the change makers group to a large extent. And it's more than the Match.com. In some sense, it's also kind of a volunteer TaskRabbit, because part of the emphasis here is on getting the right volunteers matched up, which is an essential part. And it's one of the reasons why people don't volunteer, because there are too many opportunities or they don't see any opportunities. And it's either you're drowning or you're thirsty. And so this has the potential of solving that problem. But I thought what was particularly interesting about the Changemakers' work on this was, okay, but could we reconceptualize what volunteering was in the first place? So that you could say, look, I'm an accountant, and the Children's Alliance, they need somebody to work on their end of year books closeout for an hour or two, and they could go out and hire somebody, pay a contractor for that purpose, or try to recruit a board member who's going to sit on a board all year long just for the purpose of doing this 1 hour activity, or maybe somebody could just do it while they're sitting at Starbucks or at Bean and Barrel talking, having a cup of coffee. That it changed the demands of volunteering in a way that would seek to make it possible for people to volunteer on their own time and on their own terms. And in chunks that didn't require you spending a day. So it's reconceptualizing volunteering as well as the notion of the match. So I thought that was really interesting, and I haven't heard that as a municipal initiative anywhere. And it derives directly from what our findings were on the age-friendly work that both of you led, where volunteering, at least for me, I knew it was a desire in the community. I was surprised how high it ranked for people as one of their felt needs. So this one I thought is also very strong, and it's easily, in some sense, the easiest to understand, because it doesn't involve SSI transaction payments or data sharing agreements or whatever. So and it emerged from the change makers in that way for that reason. Whether or not I know of other platforms that seek to do some of these things do exist. So that whether it really is unique, I suspect it is on the reconceptualization, maybe not on the matching piece. So that's a challenge in that one. And on the homeless one, I like the homelessness one as well. It's discrete. It tackles a high-impact problem and identifies a unique way of approaching the problem. Not just we're going to take technology to it or something like that, but it really tries to look at the incentives on all sides of the equation and to use the power of the resources to create incentives and disincentives for good and bad behavior, both by homeless individuals, but also motel owners and a bunch of other parties in the system. So it has this one I thought has a good strong theory of change. I think for me, as we get closer to the 19th, the questions around does it exist in some form that's not a nonprofit? Is anybody else attempting it, which I'm sure you've already begun to look at, would be some of the key questions. Because ultimately, at this stage, these are all three great ideas, and we at some point we should pursue all of them. And one of them we already are, and one of them looks like really opportune in any way. So then the decision, the choice for me is like, okay, which one's has the best chance of winning? Which one has $5 million if you flip over the piece of paper? Less about which one do I like the best, because they're all terrific. But if there are differences about which one is the most likely to win, I'd rather go with the one that's most likely to win, and then look for other ways to do the other two. So I'd be perfectly comfortable saying, let's, and sometimes maybe it's best to rank them even, because between now and the 19th, you're going to, as you start to put pen to paper on the application itself, and we do some of the research, and we say, oh my God, the SSI thing, there's this provision of the Tax Reform Act that expressly forbids that from occurring. Okay, so we can't do this. And this is what happened last time. Right, we had a set of ideas from the Food Innovation Task Force, and some of them were great, and then we started to look at them, and as the deadline was coming, actually, we can't do that. Or we can do that, but that's going to take 4 years and not 2. But once we start to really to sketch out what's possible, some of these may drop out in that way. So rather than just picking one and saying just do that, what I would suggest is that we say, okay, that is our preferred option. Focus your energies on that, but to the extent possible, keep these other two in the development stream for the next 2 weeks without investing hours and hours and hours of staff time. But since we have to do the Kids Home Run piece in some form anyway, if we try to keep it on a parallel development track. That way, if the homelessness one doesn't work, or we determine it may not be that competitive, we still have an option to move on the Kids Home Run piece. And if neither of them, then the volunteer one is a potential as well. But that would be my suggestion as a way to move forward, because I agree with the council in terms of impact and all of that. But I think we should be really focusing on winning at this stage and having our best foot forward on the 19th. Is that the 19th or 20th?
20th is.
19th is Amazon, right? Okay.
Right.
Don't give them a next date.
Give me back my date.
All right. Okay, I see nodding heads, so that makes sense.
Yeah, was the ranking then the homelessness one, then the kids home run related piece, and then the volunteering? Was that the ranking?
Yeah, I suspect the challenge with the volunteering one is that there's not an internal staffing constituency for that, right? There's, you know, so that if you were to start focusing on the homelessness piece, for example, with some of your partners on staff, and Mr. Winbrock and Ms. Jimenez and others were working on the Kids Home Run piece on the natural, but trying to compress some of that work right away on Kids Home Run. But there isn't a natural, staffing inside City Hall that could productively spend time doing the volunteer one as just the third option. So it may be, keep it on your, if the other two fail, then we'll have to, we'll all come into City Hall and we'll start writing together to get it done. But maybe focus on homelessness first, Kids Home Run second, and keep the volunteer one as a let's look at this as a potential project in some other way in the strategic plan or at some other time. Okay.
And the Kids Home Run work won't be wasted work. I mean,
That's right.
that we can, or maybe another opportunity to forward that. It would be a huge endeavor.
Yeah. All right. So you have sufficient direction? Do we need a motion on this item? Nope, okay. Great, thank you. Thanks, Council. Council calendar, Ms. Berlin?
Good evening, mayors of this, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. A couple of events that are coming up. This Sunday is the Center for Land-Based Learning's Dinner at the Barn, and that starts at 4 o'clock, and we have a table and I think a couple who are interested. So if you are interested, we have some more spots available. And then Saturday, October 14th, is the fire station open house at Station 45, and that starts at 11 o'clock.
All right, any questions on the calendar? City manager report?
Just briefly, Mayor, members of the council, the mayor did mention October 19th for the date to submit the Amazon proposal. So Aaron Laurel, Diane Richards, the economic development staff, are working closely with Fulcrum to propose the Bridge District as a site for the second headquarters for Amazon. That proposal in a draft form went to Greater Sacramento tonight, or actually around 5 o'clock today. And then Greater Sacramento then will vet 11 sites. Bridge District is very, very strong in terms of the early read on sites for this region. It's a great drill for us. We kind of consider the audience not just Amazon, but Greater Sacramento as well, so they better understand how that project is so ready for office mixed-use development as we know it is. So they plan to vet those, put it in a regional package, have a press conference on October 18th, and submit it to Amazon by the 19th.
All right, Mr. Ledesma?
Was I asking to get a copy of?
Yeah, as soon as I can get you the draft, what we've submitted, but then as we get closer, you'll see the regional package.
That's fine.
All right, any other questions, city manager report? City attorney report? Staff directions from members of the council? We have no future agenda item requests. Or motion to adjourn? Been moved by Ms. Sandine, seconded by Ms. Roscoe. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.